Hey guys, welcome to another little DIY episode of Under Pressure. Today we're going to be talking about Hatsan Quattro triggers. Guys, the Hatsan Quattro trigger is one of our favorite triggers here at Airgun Depot. It's super adjustable, it's really easy to work on, and really out of the box, it's a pretty great trigger. On most guns that we get, that we have here to test, we really have had no complaints with the Quattro triggers. But there may come a time where you may want to adjust it a little bit or lighten it up. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that on our AT-44 here. Now this is going to be pretty much the same on both the PCP and the Vortex piston or Springer Quattro triggers as well. The adjustment's pretty much going to be the same. However, the adjustments are a little bit finer on the PCPs than they are on the brake barrel guns. So you're going to have a little bit more work to do to get your trigger set up just right on a brake barrel as opposed to a PCP. So let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and get started here. First thing I'm going to do is remove our air tube so that we don't have any air in the gun, and that way we can actually dry fire the gun. Now, if you're working on a Springer, you're never going to want to dry fire that gun. So when you're doing a trigger adjustment on a Springer or Vortex piston gun, it can take a little while because you have to make your small adjustments, cock the gun, load it, fire it to test it, and so on and so forth. But with a PCP, you can go ahead and remove the air tube and do a little bit of dry firing, and it shouldn't hurt your gun as long as you're careful there. So we'll go ahead and get the air tube removed here, and then we'll zoom in so you can get a little bit closer look of the trigger. Alright guys, so we've gone ahead and removed our air tube and our magazine so that we can work on the gun as needed. I flipped it over so that we can get to the trigger adjustment screws as well. And we're going to need just a couple basic tools to go ahead and do this trigger adjustment properly. Most of the tools are actually going to be included with your gun. You'll notice with your AT-44 that there's going to be a white box like this inside of the box the rifle comes in. And this is all of the extra tools and accessories that you're going to need. So inside this box, there's actually going to be a small baggie labeled tools for trigger adjustment, and you can use these. They work just fine. However, I actually like to use a set of T-handle Allen wrenches like this, just because, especially when you're adjusting the trigger pull weight, it gives you a little bit more control over what you're doing than like a standard Allen key like this. And then the last thing you're going to need, and this isn't necessarily even something you have to have, but it helps a lot, and that's going to be a trigger pull gauge. This is a digital one. It's made by Lyman. You can pick these up at pretty much any sporting goods store. They're not terribly expensive. Or you can get a actual spring trigger pull gauge, and they're even less expensive. But this makes it really nice for checking your pull weight and seeing how much adjustment you get, per turn on your screws. So we'll go ahead and get started with our adjustment. First thing we're going to need to do is go ahead and cock our gun and then take it off safety. And then we're going to use our trigger pull gauge to get an initial pull weight. So I've got our pull gauge here. Okay. Looks like we're at about 4 pounds, 11.3 ounces. Now, that's not too terribly heavy. In fact, that's about what I like for a trigger that's going to be used out in the field for hunting. So we're going to go ahead and start doing our adjusting. Now, on the trigger, there's going to be 3 screws for adjusting this trigger. There's going to be 2 small screws at the front, and those 2 small screws are going to adjust the first stage tension and then the first stage length. So the first stage tension, you're really not going to want to mess with that, because if you do adjust that too much, your trigger's going to feel loose, and you don't really need to worry so much about it. You're really going to want to adjust that first stage length and then your second stage brake weight. So your first stage length screw is going to be the second screw towards the back of the trigger, and it is going to be a very fine adjustment. You don't need to turn it very much. Really no more than about a quarter turn, per adjustment, because if you adjust that too much, you're going to pull all of that first stage out of the trigger, and then it's either going to be like a hair trigger, or it could be potentially dangerous. It could go off either, you know, when you drop the gun or when you bump up against something when you're out hunting, or even potentially from just the vibration of cocking the gun. So now your last screw towards the back of the trigger here, that's your pull weight adjustment for the second stage brake. And that's going to be the one that most people worry about, because that's what's going to adjust the felt weight of pulling your trigger. You're going to want to adjust that again in pretty small adjustments, about a half or quarter turn per adjustment, depending on how much weight you're trying to pull out of the trigger. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm going to leave the first stage pretty much adjusted where it's at. I like the pull. I like the length of the first stage. It's already pretty short and it's not very heavy. So we're going to worry about just the second stage here. So I'm going to grab my 2.5mm Allen key. I'm going to go ahead and insert it into the screw here at the back. And then you're going to want to turn it to the left. You're basically going to want to back that screw out. And we're going to want to do it again about a half turn at a time, and then recheck our trigger pull to make sure it's where we want. So I'm going to go ahead and back it out our initial half turn here. And then we'll go ahead and cock the gun and do another trigger pull and see where we're at. Okay. So that puts us at 2 pounds, 2.7 ounces. So that's about as close as where I want to be. I'm not going to go much lower than that. I'm going to go ahead and pull the gun off our stand here and just check it from its normal firing position. Yeah, that feels great to me. Nice short first stage, real light pull on the second stage. It's going to be perfect for shooting some targets, doing a little bit of hunting, kind of general all-purpose with that 2-pound trigger. So all you need to do is go ahead and reinstall your air tube back in your rifle, and then you are ready to head out and do some shooting with your newly adjusted Hatsan Quattro trigger. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick little video. You know, there's a lot of theory when it comes to how triggers should be set and what adjustments you're going to want to make, and I'm sure that many of you are going to have different opinions, but this is pretty much the best way that I know of to adjust a trigger, and it's pretty much the way that Hatsan recommends it from the factory. This isn't the only trigger adjustment video we're going to do, guys. We've got a few others in the works, so look for a few more of these in the future, and hopefully we can show you some ways to make the trigger a little bit better on your gun. I know we're going to be taking a look at a Marauder, and a couple other Crossman guns, and maybe even looking into some BSA and Gammo guns as well as air arms. So stay tuned here to Airgun Depot's YouTube channel. Again, my name's Cameron. Be sure to post any comments or questions you have in the section below, and we'll see you next time.